issue here really goes back to what I said at the beginning of my talk. Hindu nationalism relies on a particular vision of Indian history that happens to be basically false. And this puts Hindu nationalists in a pretty precarious position. They're basing their authority in large part on a mythology that a serious historian can shatter to pieces. As a result, Hindu nationalists hate Indo-Islamic history and by extension, those who study and write about it. Sometimes people frame this as some sort of debate, imagining that there are two competing sides of some historical question. But let me assure you that there is no debate. Indo-Islamic rule happened, and people like me, trained academics, are the ones who have access to the original sources and the ability to make historically sound arguments about this complex period of Indian history. That I am not Indian, by the way, does not matter. The practice of modern history is not in your blood, rather it's in your training. And so what we really have here is not a debate, but two unequally matched sides. One is a runaway winner in historical arguments, but the other is top dog in strong arm and intimidation tactics. So this leaves the historian to fight a sort of uphill battle in the public sphere. And frankly, it is one that I think I and others are losing currently. Ad hominem attacks are succeeding in silencing scholarly voices. I have many colleagues who prefer not to engage in public discourse and not to write for a popular audience about Indian history, precisely in order to avoid the hate mail, to protect their ability to travel here to India, and out of legitimate fears for their personal safety and even the safety of their families. Okay, is it important to have in-depth knowledge of someone's own opinion to understand their life? In general, yes, if you have access to that sort of evidence, but it's equally important to gather other sorts of evidence from outside, right? So a sort of point of historical method is that you want as much evidence as possible, and you specifically want it from diverse viewpoints. Second point I would make on historical method and sort of how to do history well is what evidence you need is determined by what questions you ask, right? And sometimes you ask a question and there is not evidence to answer it, and then you have to shift your question and adjust appropriately. But there's not, if evidence doesn't exist in a vacuum, it's only valuable insofar as you want to know about specific things for everyone else. I will take this opportunity, I suppose, to say that I am concerned, as I think many of us are concerned, about the Indian Academy going forward with external pressures and politicization, and particularly the cutback on graduate students at JNU, right? I mean, these things are sort of horrifying to see. And right now, the Indian Academy, as I see it, is strong, and I have many colleagues that I work with and respect very much here in India. It's hard to see if that's going to last another generation, right? And that's something that is very saddening and almost so horrifying, one doesn't want to think about it. In terms of, Hindus come to constitute about 31.5% of the high Mughal nobility in Aurangzeb's empire at its height. This is largely due to the incorporations of Marathas into the regime as the empire spreads south. Many Brahmins and Kshatriyas are there. Could we call the Mughal Empire sort of Mughal upper caste rule? I don't think I would go that far, personally. There was never a question that the majority of those in the Mughal nobility needed to be Muslim. In fact, there's some evidence, it's not super strong, but there is some sort of circumstantial evidence that suggests that some Muslim groups in Aurangzeb's nobility were dissatisfied with the increase in the number of Marathas. It wasn't Hindus in general, it was really Marathas in particular.